Hello, everybody, and welcome into another season preview show here at the Hockey Writers YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and we are up to the St. Louis Blues here on our previews. And I've got Ethan Carter here who covers the Blues. He's Substack, lots of other stuff here on the site. How's it going, Ethan?
Pretty good, Matthew. How are you doing?
Doing great. Hockey's just around the corner. It's been a long summer. It was pretty quiet for a while, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of stuff happened. Of course, involved the Blues,
hmm
putting an offer sheet to the Oilers, who didn't match, and they got their two players that they wanted. So we'll talk about them. But yeah, the Blues didn't make the playoffs last season. And then made some changes in the offseason to hopefully maybe do a retool on the fly a bit, maybe, and see if they can make it back into the playoff picture this season. But let's jump right in because, like I said, there's been a few things that have happened in the last couple weeks that have changed a bit, and they've been in the news quite a bit. So I want to start. Let's start with Dylan Holloway because he's the newest Blue. Having that offer sheet. What do you think about him? First of all, let's talk about that offer sheet because were you surprised by it? Were you surprised that they actually got Holloway in the end?
Well, between the two players that they offer sheeted, which would obviously Holloway and Broberg, I definitely thought that Holloway would be the more likely that Edmonton would match. I think there's something to the fact that it's probably, an overpay for both, but that's kind of what you have to do with offer sheets. And Holloway, I think, will be a good fit with the Blues because I think he's a guy who's going to play second or third line minutes. I think he'll mesh well with the way the Blues play, and I think there's a legitimate chance that he kind of has a breakout season this year and maybe scores 20 25 goals. I mean, we saw Jake Neighbors do it with the Blues last season. So I think Holloway is going to be a really, really solid addition, maybe the best addition of the offseason. They've had a bunch of them,
Mhm.
none of them gigantic additions, but I think Holloway could be the best of the bunch.
Yeah, he's really young, still hasn't hit his potential at all in the NHL yet,
hmm
and it could be part of this core group moving forward of whatever whatever the core is going to look like at least. What do you think about the rest of the forward group going into the season? You mentioned Jake Neighbors, of course, coming in, had a really good season last year. Of course, they're returning a lot of the same forwards coming back. Pavel Buchnevich, of course, he's still that big part of the team. There was talk that he could have been traded. Obviously, didn't happen. What do you think about this group? They added Matthew Joseph too, Alexander Texier in the bottom six. What do you think about the forwards here?
They've really kind of shored up the depth. They've got almost an entirely new bottom six. It seems. I mean, if you looked right now at the projected lineup that a lot of people have, you'd have Holloway in the bottom six in the third line. You'd have Radek Faksa down the middle of the third line. You'd have Texier on a wing, Joseph on a wing. So a lot of changes to the forward group. A little surprised that Buchnevich and Saad weren't guys that they
Mm.
would have considered trading. Buchnevich obviously gets the extension. Armstrong obviously likes him a lot. Obviously, there's a lot there, in the way of being a two-way forward. He's very good. Last season wasn't as good as his first couple seasons with the Blues, but I think they think he can figure it out. And then Saad's coming off a really good year, and he's a good guy to have on the team. I mean, he fits really well. But I would have thought the Blues would at least try to move one of those guys out, maybe make way for maybe a Dalibor Dvorsky or a
Hmm.
Zachary Bolduc to jump right into the lineup as the season starts. But it looks like they're going to roll with those guys in Springfield. And I think the forward group is much improved because they have a kind of a much more legitimate bottom six than they had last season. So I think that'll help them a lot this year.
For sure. I mean, depth wise, they are definitely a lot
Uh-huh.
deeper. Guys that can maybe even jump into the top six, like Dylan Holloway. He did that in Edmonton too, or he would play in, with some of the more of the better players. So yeah, he could potentially be more of a difference maker in the top of the lineup too. But we'll see where that goes if he can mesh right away into the lineup. All right, moving to the defense, of course, Philip Broberg getting added there. He's the biggest addition. Ryan Suter, a later addition here after being bought out by the Dallas Stars. So I mean, that's a veteran guy that seems to never. It seems like he's never aged. I mean, he's aging, but it doesn't look like he's aging. What do you think about this defense group going in?
Well, it's kind of been the Achilles heel of the team for the past couple of years. It's kind of been a reason why they haven't had any success. And they weren't really that good defensively a couple of years ago when they last made the playoffs, but they scored a lot of goals. Like Justin Falk had 16 goals that season. And Colton Parayko was good last season. I think he kind of found himself again. Nick Leddy is kind of what he is at this point. Like he's a good skater, but there's obviously limitations there defensively. I think Broberg's a really exciting addition because if you look at, the Edmonton Oilers run, Philip Broberg was probably their second or third best defenseman towards
Mhm.
the end. Like Bouchard, Ekholm, Broberg, I think was kind of the three there. So that's an exciting addition. Obviously, 4 million a year is 4.5 million a year is a bit much, but you got to do what you got to do with an offer sheet. I don't think there was any way Edmonton was going to be able to match that one.
Mhm.
I think he'll be a good fit. I'd be very curious to see if the Blues roll with Broberg or Suter with Parayko because I think
Mhm.
Suter is a guy that could be really, really good with Parayko because you look at Parayko's best seasons, he had Jay Bouwmeester with him, and Jay
Yeah.
Bouwmeester, old veteran defenseman, steady, solid. I think Suter can be that with Parayko. I don't know if Suter can play the minutes that position might require. But it's an interesting decor. They have a little bit more flexibility this year. We'll see if uh, Olivier Joseph fits
Mhm.
into the lineup at some point. Perunovic still there. Obviously, Perunovic going to be much more needed now with Krug being out for the season.
Yeah.
And you just got to hope that Letty can be solid enough, and then Falk has a bit of a bounce back. But um, the bread and butter of this team, I think, is going to be goal scoring and goaltending. So
Yeah.
the defense is what it is at this point. I don't think it's great. I think it's going to be a little bit better this year. I think they have a little bit more dependability on the left side, especially with Krug really struggled last
Mhm.
season. Scandella I mean, Suter is an upgrade over Scandella in my opinion. So the D is a little bit better, but they still can't rely on it to get
Mhm.
where they want to go.
Yeah, I mean they've got a lot of high priced guys still there,
Hmm.
and we'll see how it all kind of plays out. But Broberg is an interesting one. I think again a guy that could grow in with the core group because of his age. He's really young still, so
Yeah.
I don't know what upside he's got. I mean 4 million's a little much for him right at this point, but
Yeah.
uh, you had to. I mean they had to put a big money thing on it so that the Oilers couldn't match because if it was lower, they probably could have. So, all right, moving to the goaltending, it didn't change. Jordan Binnington still the starter, Joel Hofer the backup. Are you good with the goaltending at this point? You said it's a strength of the team, so I is it something that could be good this year again?
Yeah, it's going to be if this team wants to get back into the playoffs, their goaltending needs to be what it was last season. Like both guys had good seasons. Binnington kind of found himself again. Hofer is I think going to be really good in this league.
Mm,
I mean Binnington 913 last season, 28 wins, kind of finding what he was, maybe 4 years ago.
mm,
Maybe not that good. I mean, this was his best save percentage season of his career if you don't count the 32 games played in the Stanley Cup season, which you should count. But um, he had a really good season last year, and for him to do that behind a Blues defense that is kind of notoriously not great, I think is enormous. Um, the goal scoring is going to be that like if the goaltending is the same this year as it was last year, where both guys were good, the goal scoring, if they can score more goals, they should be in the playoffs. Like last year, they weren't a very good team. They didn't score enough goals. They were 24th in the league in goals for. They still had 92 points,
mm.
43, 33, and 6. And if, they were in a different part of the country, maybe in the East Coast, they would have been in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
um, the goal scoring's got to get better, but the goaltending, I think it's the most reliable strength of the team, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, definitely Bennington looked a lot better than he did in a couple,
Yeah.
what a season from before that. So,
Mhm.
they were talking about he may not be the goaltender for the
Yeah.
Blues. So that's a good sign because I don't know who else they're going to get to be their starter. So Hofer
Right.
could eventually be that. I mean,
Hmm.
he may be the goaltender of the future, but all right. Before we move to the division conversation here, the head coach, Drew Bannister, is now the coach to start the season. He was, of course, hired as the interim and then signed 2 year extension in May. So, what do you think about him being the coach to start the season? That can make a big difference. Him kind of starting fresh and not mid-season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good in a couple aspects. I thought with the young players like a Jake Neighbors or a Zachary Bolduc when he came up, and some of the younger defensemen, I thought he did a good job. Being an AHL coach, it makes sense. It definitely wasn't my first choice. In the offseason, whenever they had kind of a coaching search, there was a couple names that I liked a little bit more. But I understand what they're doing. I mean, it's only a 2-year extension. I think they'll see how the next 2 years go, reassess. Obviously, you're going to have Alexander Steen taking over as
Mhm.
GM in a couple of years, so that'll change things a little bit. We'll see how he feels about it. I think Bannister did a good job last year. I think he did fine, maybe a little bit better than I expected. I mean, he went 30, 19, and 5, which there's always some sort of a bump usually when you bring in an interim head coach. But I think he did enough to earn it, but it just wasn't my first choice. I understand though why Armstrong did what he did,
Mhm.
and I think it's not going to affect whether the Blues make the playoffs or not. I think he'll be good enough if they do make the playoffs, and even if they don't, I think most people won't blame him.
Mhm.
So it's a fine hire. It's not
Mhm.
great, it's not bad, but it makes a lot of sense. I think.
I think so too. I mean, he did an okay job with that. 2 years isn't a big thing, like you said.
Yeah.
And I think Steen will probably reassess it and hire
Hmm.
his own head coach when he becomes
Yeah.
GM. So I think that's probably something coming down the line. All right, looking at the division, the Central Division is a tough one. You got the top heavy. It's pretty top heavy, I think, at this point still. You got the Jets, you got the Stars, you've got the Avalanche, and now the Predators, who added two ridiculously good players. Where do the Blues fall in here? Are they in the middle? Do they have a chance? I don't know if they, I mean, do they have a chance to kind of push into that top part, or are they kind of mid-range?
Yeah, I think kind of 4 through 6 is where I would put them right now. I think they're better than Minnesota. I think they're better than Utah. I think they're better than Chicago. And I think Nashville, I don't know if Nashville is going to be quite as good as their upgrades suggest they should be. And I don't think both Winnipeg and Colorado will be as good as they were last year.
Mm,
I think they're all playoff teams. I could see a scenario where the Central has both wild card teams.
mm,
Because I think if you look at the Pacific, I mean, Calgary, Anaheim, San Jose, Seattle, I would almost rule out right
mm,
now. And then who knows about LA and. But I think the Blues will be a legitimate contender for a wild card spot. I don't see them pushing into the top three. That would be a little bit surprising,
yeah.
but I think they'll be right around where Vegas, Nashville, and LA were last year in points, which is like right around the 100 mark. Those
Mm.
teams, LA at 99, Nashville at 99, Vegas at 98. So I think they'll be right around there. Whether that's good enough to make the playoffs this year, we'll see. It was last year, so I think they'll obviously be an improved team. It'd be hard for them not to be,
Mm.
unless something went terribly wrong. But I think they're definitely middle of the pack. Like I think there's three teams are definitely better than, and then after that, they're kind of in the mix in the middle.
Yeah, so they're going to be fighting for those wild card spots right
Hmm.
at the end of the season. So it's going to be, yeah, tough. It's just a tough league. I mean, there's so many teams that got better in the offseason, and the parity is really big in the league right now, which is great. I mean, you love the competitiveness. So
Hmm.
we'll see how the Blues do. All right, let's do our quick fire round here. And these are all just quick questions, one or two sentence answers. So let's start with the biggest storyline question mark going into the season for the Blues.
I think it is, can the center position be good outside of Robert Thomas?
Yeah, that's definitely one. I mean, you need at least two really good
Yeah.
centers
Yeah.
for this league now. All right, one or two breakout stars.
I'm going to go Dylan Holloway and I'll just do Holloway and Broberg. Why not? That might make
Yeah.
Edmonton fans upset.
There you go. I think Holloway's definitely a big one.
Hmm.
If he definitely gets some, I think he's going to get some time in the top six,
Yeah.
and of course, power play he'll be on there too. So we'll see. All right, someone that needs to bounce back from last season.
I would say, I mean, it's hard to not go with one of Kyrou or Buchnevich. So I kind of don't even know if I could choose one. I mean, it's just
Both.
I'll say both. I think it's fair.
That'd be good if both of them could, because
Yeah.
that'd be a big thing. All right, someone or something that could be an X factor this season.
I'm gonna say the Colton Parayko D partner because I think if they have that shutdown number one pairing, that takes the kind of changes things because all good teams have that.
Yeah, for sure. You think Broberg could be part of that, or?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Broberg or Suter because we've done
Hmm.
the Letty Parayko thing. I don't think that's ever going to become that. It's a little bit too weak on the left side, but I think Suter or Broberg are perfect candidates to try that with.
Yeah, veteran and a rook, young guy. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a good thing. All right, let's talk about some prospects, and of course, the Blues have quite a few good ones coming. I Do you think any of them that could surprise and make the lineup? There's not a lot of room for these guys, like you said, with some of the guys that didn't move out, but who could do it?
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be anyone, but I'm going to choose. If I'm going to choose one, I'll say Dalibor Dvorsky impresses in the camp and preseason.
Yeah, it's a good one. He's probably, I don't know if he's their top prospect right now. He's one of them.
Yeah.
He's in that mix for sure. All right, anyone else that people should be watching that probably won't make the team, but should be watching throughout the season?
I would say Zachary Bolduc, who was pretty good last season with the team, but he'll certainly start in Springfield, I would think. And then I'll go Theo Lindstein, who
Mm.
is the defenseman first round pick last year from Sweden. I think he's pretty legit.
Yeah, I think Lindstein's one guy I know Peter really likes. He's talked about him on Prospect Corner. He actually talked about him in the last episode on the prospect rankings. So,
There you
uh,
go.
yeah, check out that episode. You can get more about him. All right, who will lead the team in scoring at forward and defense?
Forward, I'm gonna go Robert Thomas again at 86 points last year. I think he'll pretty much be the same player. Hard not to, see that happening. Defensively, I'm gonna make a bold prediction because I this guy hasn't stayed healthy, but Krug is gone. So I'm gonna say
Yeah.
Scott Perunovich racks up a ton of assists
Oh, there you
and
go.
he gets it done. It's gonna be close.
There you go. I That'd be a pretty big thing. And he's a guy that could probably a candidate for a breakout star, I guess, too,
Yeah.
on defense. All right, you said bold prediction. So do you want to give another one? Bold prediction, hot take for this season?
I'm gonna say Jordan Binnington wins the Vezina.
Pretty bold. He'd have to beat out a few other guys that
Yeah,
are in the running
he.
too.
We'll see. It's probably too bold, but that's fine. Maybe he does. Who knows?
Who knows? He definitely could.
Yeah,
I think that defense needs to be better in front of him too to
yeah,
help him out.
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Ethan, for coming on the show and talking about the Blues season coming up. I think it's going to be a better one this season
hmm
than last, and probably won't have to trade a ton of guys this time. And we'll see how it all goes. But make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We got lots of preview content out there already. And of course, throughout the preseason and the regular season, we'll have stuff too. And check out the Substack, which gives you all the best articles from the Blues, and of course, all the other teams have them too. But check out all that at hawkers.com and the Substack. But until our next preview, we'll see you next time.